The information provided on lifeinterruptedradio.com is for educational purposes only.
Welcome, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio. I'm your host, Sharon Sayler from SharonSayler.com. And oh my goodness, I normally say that it's my Friday night, 7 p.m., but I'm doing a pre-record today. But you're listening to this at Friday night, 7 p.m. So welcome to the weekend. Oh my goodness, it's been crazy. I am down here in Florida. If you're watching this on video, you'll see this lovely palm trees in the back. I can't quite get the lake, but there is an awesome lake, and there's some really cool ducks and ibises out there too. So it's fantastic. I just love it here. And I'm just excited to be here because I have one of our favorite joyous people on. We're not going to talk about joy tonight, though. But our last show that we did was all about happiness and joy. But I wanted to have Swami Tirtha back because, you know, he's an Ayurvedic expert. I always mispronounce that word, but you guys know what I mean.
You said it
He's
right.
an Ayurveda expert, and we're going to talk about digestion. And let me tell you why. Because I've been traveling a lot lately, and it is so hard to eat according to my food sensitivities and what I need for my healing process to continue. You know, I've been off all the meds for a while. I'm doing awesome. But I'll tell you, if I slip a little bit on what I'm supposed to be doing and eating, I start to feel those little twinges where it says, Sharon, get back on that path, get back on the path. So I was talking to Swami a little bit ago, and he suggested, let's talk about digestion. And I said, awesome. So let me give you a little bio about Swami. You probably already know him from the last show, but his name is Swami Tirtha. He's also known as the Orange Cowboy. If you're on video, you can tell that. He's a #1 best-selling author who has presented to the White House Commission on Alternative Medicine. He has speaking clients include top medical universities, including Johns Hopkins, and he has over 4 decades of teaching wellness and consciousness. He's also known as the joy expert, but he is actually an Ayurvedic master. So welcome, Swami. Thank you so much for being on the show, because this is a topic I think is really misunderstood. Because once I started feeling better, honestly, I thought I could cheat. I can't. So
I'll tell you how you could cheat.
Oh, okay. But Swami, tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming an Ayurvedic master, and then we'll jump into the topic of digestion.
Sure. Well, I was living for a number of years in New York City, working in New York City, and out of nature, you know, because you're in the city. And at the time, I didn't quite realize I needed the nature connection. And, you know, every winter, the flu would go around, people get sick. And being holistic minded, I'd always go to the health food store. I'd get this herb or that herb or some Western herb or some Chinese herb. And nothing really did a good job. And then in the process of looking at these things and researching, I found Ayurveda. And there was a store in town. I went down to the Ayurveda store and I said, I had the flu. And he gave me some powder. And I went home and I put it in a glass with some water and I drank it. And all of a sudden, I went like this. In other words, I didn't know I was tilted to my right, but suddenly as I drank it, I stopped being tilted and I was upright.
Wow.
I was balanced, in other words. I felt balanced. And I said, first off, I've never seen anything happen that quickly. No, I've never had a condition change in the blink of an eye. And secondly, I realized that the flu was not something inside of me that had to come out. It was just some sort of imbalance. And then the third thing I said was, I got to learn this Ayurveda thing.
Makes sense to me. I mean, if I had something happen that quick, I'd go, there's something to this.
Yeah.
Although I have to tell you, when I go off my diet, it does happen to me quick. I notice inflammation very, very quickly.
Right. And could come back fairly quickly too from these things. Because when I travel, I do keep my secret Ayurvedic herbs with me. Not that I have, well, any kind of, I think, imbalance in a sense, for the most part, is an inflammation, you could say, you know.
Yeah.
And when anywhere I travel, I have to go with my bottle of Ayurvedic herbs called Triphala. And Triphala, it means 3 fruits, phala, 3 fruits in Sanskrit. And when I take that, when I wake up in the morning, whatever I eat, like even if I eat healthy, there's a healthy organic Mexican food that I love when I travel. And if it's around, I get it. And even that, it's just something's not, I'm not used to my home cooked meals, which is every day.
Mm-hmm.
When I take those pills in the morning, everything is fine. Literally, I'm just so happy and everything moves through me smoothly. And so I'll recommend that little secret. Not that too cheap, but when we travel, we have to travel. Things are getting better for our options, but it's still not home cooked meals. And so I'll recommend that trifle as your secret traveling buddy.
Oh, fantastic. Because, it is hard. Well, when you travel, first off, you don't know where those secret Mexican organic places are or what have you. And oftentimes my hardest time is actually air travel, trying to find good quality food without too many, I'll say, secret ingredients, because they don't list everything in the product that you're getting on the menu. But let's talk a little bit just about how does Ayurveda approach digestion? I know they approach that very differently than, I'll say, Western med.
Yeah, when I started practicing Ayurveda or learning about Ayurveda was in the mid-80s, 1980s. And Ayurveda, it's as old as 5,000 to 10,000 years. And it has always said that the cause of most physical conditions is due to poor digestion.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty profound.
And I heard that, and I went, but in this 3.5 year healing process of mine, this healing journey that I'm really doing excellent on, once I understood what goes in your mouth is causing a lot of what's going on in your body, that's when I started to see a rapid change.
Yeah. So right now, I'd say in the last 3 to 5 years, some Western medicine people are talking about the gut as actually having more intelligence and intuition than our brain.
I'm going to say I've heard that, and I've listened to online people talk about it, but I have to say, in my experience right now, and this is Sharon's experience, I haven't found that with my Western med doctors. I've been able to develop my own little team who believe it, but it took some searching. You have to really search for people where you're going, yep, that sounds right. Yep, my intuition says I connect with you. Yes. But how do we approach what we put in our mouth and digestion from that standpoint of healing?
So let's start really so simple. I call it pre-Ayurveda. Some simple things that anybody could do, because Ayurveda is going to scare people. That word, somebody said, anything that ends in an A, I don't want to know about.
Oh, really?
Anything that ends in a vowel, I don't want to know about it. So if we switch from white sugars to whole cane sugars, so meaning honey, raw honey, maple syrup, or even like a whole cane sugar, you're going to feel so much better within 3 to 5 days, because there's nutrition in whole cane sugars that feed you. White sugar, your body, well, first off, there's research that now shows it's worse than cocaine on our brains, on our bodies. So I'm not saying stop sweets, but I'm saying replace them with a healthy sweet. Anything white sugar, white bread, white salt. So whole grain breads and like Himalayan pink salt, rock salt, or sea salt. If you just do one of those 3 things, then your life is going to change.
Wow, just one. I've done all 3, and so I could see them. I'm curious though about the sugar. I'm glad you said that. I've tried. I'll say I'm 90% off things. I used to be just everything had to be sweet, and it was processed sugar. That was not easy for me, and I'm glad you said no. You could have a little honey, because all I wanted was that little bit of sweetness, and I think my brain would have gone, okay, we can live through this. It was that hard break from when my doctor said no sugar. All sorts of panic set in.
Now, Ayurveda says for air people and fire people, I'm sort of jumping ahead, for 2 of the 3 constitutions, they actually need something sweet every day with their foods.
Oh.
So it's an Ayurvedic requirement for 2/3 of the constitution. So the doctors only know white sugar, and they're right. Stay away from white sugar.
Right. But I'll tell you, the body, and I kept thinking that it was the little microbiome in my gut going, what? Send sugar. Because that was, darn, Well, I'm off of it pretty much now too, but and since I met you, I've been doing the honey thing. But yeah, it did ease the transition because
Terrific, terrific.
when a doctor says no sugar, you're like, especially if you're a sugar addict.
Yeah.
So let's.
And just on a side note, if you buy your breads in a regular supermarket, guess what's in whole wheat bread in some of the major brands of breads?
What,
White
sugar?
White sugar.
Really?
Crazy. I don't know why. Read your ingredients, or better yet, buy from a health food store. It's if it costs a little more, it's a health plan for you. You'll be healthier.
Now, last time you shared with us a type of wheat, because I have gluten sensitivities, and you shared with us this type of wheat. And now I'm not eating much of it because I still want to be careful with my system.
Okay.
But it was so nice to have a piece of toast not too long ago. But it's not that easy to find. So share with us this wheat that has different.
Einkorn, Einkorn, Einkorn. You can get it. Definitely, there's 2 companies on Amazon that you could buy it from. Some of the bigger, better health food stores have it, or you can ask them to order it because they do sell one of those companies through the health food stores. Our health food store has it. And it's nice to feel some gluten. We kind of need gluten for the fatty stuff that we need in our bodies. That's a whole nother topic. Westerners tend to go so extreme, no fat, no sugar, and we go too far. I mean, I can't find a fatted yogurt, a whole milk yogurt anymore. Like, come on, man. We go to extremes. And Ayurveda is called the mother medicine, the mother nurture. It gives you what you're missing. It doesn't cut things out because, if your child is crying, you don't smack it in the face. You find out what's going on with it and give it some love and give it some milk or, whatever, burp it. And Ayurveda does that. It says what the issue is an imbalance. You have too much of this. Well, let's give you what you're missing. If you have an inflammation, let's give you some cool things and watery things, and that will balance your heat, your inflammation.
Wow. So that's what I love about Ayurveda is it approaches it from what's happening with you, not an either or type of situation. Because oftentimes with what I'll call the medical practice where they're very good at diagnosis and acute care.
Right.
But when you've got a long-term imbalance, which I love that way of saying that. Also, as I call it, my healing experience, which reframes everything. Language is so important to me. I find how I talk about what's going on with the body.
Basically, one of the beautiful things about Ayurveda, Sharon, is that it's very personal. So instead of saying, for example, eat vegetables because they're healthy, well, some people, if they eat broccoli, it's healthy. Others, they get gas from it. So Ayurveda says, well, what's the common denominator? It's like mathematics for health. So the common denominator is the elements, where air, fire, and water is actually ether and earth. But just to keep it even more simple for now, air, fire, water. So there's people, foods, and activities that increase air. Others increase fire. Others increase water. Now, once you know what you are in your constitution, we call it a dosha, of air or fire or water. If you're, say, an air person, or let's say a fire person, because we're talking about inflammations, fire people tend to have excesses of fire. You live in Florida, you tend to have more heat around you than Alaska. So an air person tends to have more air excesses. And an excess of an element is what we call an imbalance, or eventually it turns into a disease or an illness. So if you're mostly air person, what would an air excessive illness look like? Well, air is dry, so you might have dry skin. You might have gas. You might have your thoughts swirl too much, like a whirlwind. That's too much air. It's really simple, isn't it?
Well, it is when you explain it that way. Now, are you born one and that way the rest of your life, or does it change? Because when I was going through the autoimmune condition, a lot of inflammation, but I can't say that I really think about my past, and I don't remember it being that way all my whole life.
There are some subtler differences. Children tend to be more water, and that's why babies tend to have congestion and things like that. And midlife is when we're most active. We tend to be most fiery. And in our old age, when the bones get more brittle and dry, that tends to be more air. Or in the past, I don't want to put that out there as a reality anymore because that's old paradigm.
Right.
But in the past, memory loss and brittle bones and things like that is an excess of air. So there is that 3 stages of life. Still, you want to monitor who you are. For the most part, people who are listening now, whatever you are, your constitution, if you're from 12 to 65 or so, this is going to pertain to you.
Okay. Good. Good.
Now, a fire person, if they have too much too much fire, what would be an example of too much fire? Heartburn, heat rash, or in the brain, hot temper.
Oh, okay.
Water
Okay.
people, too much water, congestion in the lungs, lethargy. So what
Awesome.
Ayurveda says, if you have too much fire, have more air and water, because air cools the fire and water puts out the excess of fire. Too much air, have more warmth in fire, and have more water to moisten the excess air. Too much water, heat it up, dry it up with water, dry it up with air.
Oh, well, see, that makes sense. And let's drill down a little bit. That makes sense at the 30,000 foot level. If we have, let's say we're fire because of
Right.
inflammation. Let's say that. Do we change that by diet alone, or are there other things we can do? Like, are there physical activities that
Yeah.
are air and water and less fire? Or?
That's a great question. So Ayurveda recognizes that everybody learns better through a different sense. So there are ways to balance yourself through each of the senses. So some people, if they have emotional, learn better through the sense of sight. Color therapy would be something for them, particularly color therapy, aromatherapy, or music therapy are more for your emotions. So if the imbalance is more of an emotional issue, they're drawn to aromas or colors or gems, those sight, smell, and hearing, not gems. Aromas, smell, sight, color therapy, music, mantras for hearing therapy. That helps balance them that way. If you're more physical, massage. Each constitution has a different type of massage pressure that suits them better. And of course, foods. We want to have foods and herbs to balance us out too. But even activities, fire people need group sports. Otherwise, they get too fiery if they're in control all the time. Air people need more gentle activities, like instead of downhill skiing, they would need cross-country skiing. It's just like that. And water people, because they so tend to water lethargy, that you really have to light a fire under them. They need tons and tons of hard exercise, and then they feel really good.
Oh, fascinating. Okay. I didn't know.
And, this comes to the point where also there's so many exercise fads. You have to, if you know your constitution, a lot of these exercise fads can hurt you. Even the hot yoga, it's not good for fire people because they're already heated. You see, so you take and I'm not saying anything negative about hot yoga, just everything has a place for each constitution.
Well, that makes sense. I tried hot yoga a couple times because I had friends that were just, rabid about it. They just loved it. Sharon, you got to try it. It's going to loosen you up and all of this. Within 3 or 4 minutes, I almost passed out. It's like, yeah, no thanks. I'm going to have to go put ice on my body. I'll be back. That makes sense. I was like, wow, Sharon, what a lightweight you were there. It lasted 3 minutes. Goodness sakes, what a lightweight. Right. But I'm glad that it wasn't all my being lightweight, that there's some science behind it.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Okay. So we've got how do we find out our constitutions? I mean, you've given us some tips, but and we're just going, okay, I'm leaning towards that. But how do we find out an Ayurveda master who?
You could certainly seek out, do Ayurveda in your town. You can look in most Ayurveda books. I have 2 books, and I have the constitution test, the dosha test in both of the books. Most Ayurveda books will have a dosha test in them. If you do, it used to be when the internet first got started, everybody had free dosha tests online. I think I can send you a link somewhere. I have to look for it, but I created a dosha test through Google Documents, so I can make that available to you and everybody
Oh,
listening.
we could put that up on Life Interrupted Radio. Thank you, Swami. That would be fantastic. Now, I do want to plug your book because I haven't said it. It's the Ayurvedic Encyclopedia. Is that the correct
That
name?
is correct. Yes.
Yeah. Well known, sold millions and millions of copies of it. It's a fantastic, complete encyclopedia about Ayurveda. We hadn't had a chance to plug your book yet. I love it. So as we're going along, and now let's say we're just going to continue using a fire person. Let's talk a little bit about the process of digestion, because that was our topic. You and I love to go to rabbit holes, which is fine. I mean, I just love rabbit holes. But let's talk about the process of digestion. So everything from starting at the top. I know I like to think of it. I've heard people tell me, well, Sharon, it's just like one big tube. When you think about it in your body, it's just one tube, in and out.
There's a few things in terms of digestion. As soon as we start to put things in our mouth, the enzymes start to break it down. So the saliva is the water, the enzymes are the fire. The home of fire is the small intestine, the duodenum, and going into the small intestine. And that's where all fire conditions begin. It's a little bit advanced, but think of the...
No, I mean, I'm thinking because I've heard they say in Western lingo, leaky gut. A lot of autoimmune people are now saying begins in the gut.
Interesting. Very good. And then the second is what did I say first? So the small intestine. So I skipped the stomach. The stomach is the water, the home of water. Mm-hmm. So that's where the secretions come in and start to break things down. Then it pours into the duodenum and then into the small intestine, and that's where all the fire, we call it Agni, or the digestive fire. And that's where the big fire comes and digests your food for the harder portions of it that need digestion. And then it goes into the colon, and that's the home of air, and that's where the final digestive processes continue. So if you're an air person, all of your health conditions would start in the colon. If you're a fire person, all of your health conditions would start in your small intestine. And if you're a water person, all of your health conditions would start in your stomach.
Wow. That's fascinating. Because sometimes I feel like all three are arguing at times.
They could be.
So they could be, all three of those portions of my body could be arguing at the same time.
Well, the thing is, we're rarely just one constitution. Usually we're like air fire or air water or fire water. Some people are combinations of all three. And if something is out of whack long enough, it'll start to imbalance the other constitutions as well. So that's...
Wow, okay. So we're talking about balance, and what are some things are there simple tips? I mean, since we've broken it down into three groups, air, water, fire, there's probably not any sort of like whole overarching tips that we can say for better digestion, but what are some things that we can begin to do to heal our gut?
Sure. I think the overarching things are how we started. Stay off the white sugar, the white bread, the white flours, the white malts. Eat whole grains and fresh fruits and vegetables. Okay, those things are really simple. The other thing is an emotional component. When you eat, say a blessing over your food, show some gratitude, and have a pleasant conversation or music going on, because how we think affects how we eat. I'll give you an example. I had a gentleman who had too much fire come to see me. His problem was he had heartburn. So as I asked him about his lifestyle, because lifestyle plays a big part of this, he was a limousine driver, and he would go from client to client, eat his lunch, and driving on the road. I said, could you just like pull over for 5-10 minutes? Literally, it only takes 5 minutes to eat your sandwich. He did that, and his heartburn went away.
Wow.
So if we're working when we're eating, if we're arguing when we're eating, if we're watching horrific things on TV or listening to the horrific news while we're eating, we're putting those chemicals into our food and we're creating a downward cycle.
Oh, no, that's fascinating. I'm thinking about that. Our body produces these hormones and chemicals when we're watching, let's say, a murder mystery or something. Or a scary movie. We're releasing a lot of stress hormones and things like that. And if we're eating, we're sending that not only, I mean, that's going through our digestive tract too.
Yes. Yeah, we're feeding ourselves those stress hormones. Exactly. We're creating them and feeding ourselves that. Yeah.
It makes so much sense. Oh, I don't know how long ago it was. We had a great show, and then we were talking about how we are one big chemical soup. And now this makes so much more sense. It's, I'm thinking of the chemical soup of like, okay, that was processed sugar or whatever makes the chemical soup. But this really, you're saying that even the hormones that are running through our system based on our emotionals are adding to this big chemical soup. And sometimes that soup just becomes this chemical mess.
Here, before I told you that Ayurveda says the majority of our physical conditions are due to poor digestion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in all my years of practicing Ayurveda, I found what caused the poor digestion was our emotions. Because from our brain, we have the vagus nerve that runs down to our stomach. And if we are stressed, angry, frightened, etc., we're signaling our stomach and we're secreting all those stress hormones right into our foods. So even though digestion is the cause of most physical conditions, stress is the cause of most poor digestion.
Before we had to take that quick commercial break, he got me thinking about something I did not know. So I always love talking to Swami because I'm just always going, I had no idea. And when you say it, it makes perfect sense. But the obvious sometimes isn't obvious until somebody comments on it. So you were talking about how the chemicals are released from our emotions. Those same chemicals end up in our digestion. It makes perfect sense.
It's like secondhand smoke. It's secondhand negative emotions.
Wow. Okay. So what does Ayurveda say about the vagus nerve, the parasympathetic nervous system? And for those who aren't aware about it, that fight or flight or freeze response is another way of saying it, sort of the generic way of saying it.
So let me make one more connection and that'll start to give the answer. We talked about food, that digestion is the cause of most physical conditions, illnesses. Stress is the cause of most poor digestion. And lack of spiritual connection is the cause of most stress.
Really?
So if we feel disconnected, if we feel alone, empty, grief-stricken, that's going to make us stressed. If we're out of touch with nature. So the highest level of healing is however you define spiritual. It could be being in touch with nature. It could be playing with your dog. It could be painting. Whatever makes you feel connected in life, loved, self-loved, purpose-driven. That is, because if that's okay, your emotions are okay, and then your digestion is okay.
Wow. I didn't think about that. It's funny that you bring that up, and I'm just finding so many connections with our conversation today. We've had Dr. Clark on as well as others talk about when they say there's nothing wrong, they're going back to everything from childhood traumas to current type traumas and grief and how that manifests in the physical body. And you're saying there's an absolute principle and reason for that.
Right. Yes, and Ayurveda says there's 6 levels of disease development, and Western medicine can only detect it in the 5th, in the 6th, and the 7th, 5th and the 6th stages. So when people go to the doctor, what's that?
You're pretty far along by then.
Far along. And they laugh. They say to you, "You're crazy. It's all in your mind because we're not detecting it." But take heart. Your intuition, when you're out of balance, and it's easier to connect to what brings you spirit, what brings you peace, what brings you joy. And you do that, you'll start feeling better, and on all levels. You want to also make sure you're connected community-wise. Even our friend Dr. Parthanandi writes that in his book. He's a medical doctor. He's saying community is a part of your health. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, we had him on. He's awesome. That's so true. And I think that's true because I have this gorgeous community. Not only I had a wonderful community before I started the Autoimmune Hour, but now after almost 3.5, well, starting our 4th year already. Wow. Um, it's awesome. The wonderful just knowing that I have all these wonderful people in my community. There's something about community. And I want to reflect on I can't remember the research I was reading, but they were saying that they were using now building community for people who were recovering from addiction as well. And they found that the stronger the community, the higher chance of success of kicking addiction.
Yeah, there's research also came out that how women support one another in community much better than men, and it helps them succeed more, whether it's a health issue or career issues or what. It's very important to have community. When I first started practicing Ayurveda, people would come back a few weeks later and say, I know you gave me all these foods to eat, but I'm the only one I know who eats it, and it's so hard to keep it up when I have to feed my husband and wife this or my friends that. And so what I've done more recently is I go to people's towns now, get 10 or more people, well, about 10 people to make it semi-personal. So you have your own community, and I'll teach you how to live an Ayurvedic lifestyle, and each individual person. So now you can eat together, you can cook together, and have your community. It's so
I think that's wonderful because when I first started this gluten-free lifestyle as well, I'll tell you, a lot of the family members still loved their toast.
Yeah.
And that was the time when it was the all or nothing. Sharon, no sugar, no gluten, no dairy, no eggs, on and on. And it was down to just a handful of foods. And I was really not that fun to live with because oftentimes I do love to cook, and I'm cooking 2 or more meals. I think I love that idea of building communities of like-minded situations.
Right.
Be able to support, because nothing's worse than smelling toast when somebody says you can't have it.
There's ways in Ayurveda to do things that are fun for you. They even say if the food is healthy but doesn't taste good, you're physically not going to digest it because the body's going, eh.
Not only the body, the mind's going, eh.
Exactly. Now, one of the other things you asked about, general things, there are cooking spices in Ayurveda, and they do vary according to constitution. But you have your cardamom, your coriander, your fennel, your fenugreek, black pepper, dried ginger. And again, they'll vary for different constitutions of people. But when you cook with those, turmeric, there's one that's almost...
Oh, I love turmeric.
But too much turmeric is heating, so you want to be careful in the fire, people.
Okay.
Those cooking spices, and I do a whole course on the mystical benefits of the health benefits of cooking spices. So when you cook with these foods, and if you're traveling, bring a little pouch of digestive spices with you. When I used to eat pizza, I would always sprinkle some spices on it, and I felt so much better than if I didn't put it on there. So that's a wonderful thing, that it's a little secret ingredient to however you eat, whatever you eat, bring your spices into it.
Oh my gosh. So how do we find out our spices? So we found out our dosha. Do you have, does your book have a list of okay, if you're air, these are your digestive spices? If you're...
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Some of the books, my book, it goes into, actually gives you a constitution. You take the dosha test, and let's say you're air, then you go to the next appendix, and it says, these are your herbs, these are your foods, these are your aromas, these are your colors, these are your mantras. It's your whole lifestyle. So if you wanted to try to do it without a practitioner, I recommend a practitioner. It's easier to understand things. But yeah, everything is there for you, which spices to eat, which foods to eat that bring balance to you.
Yeah. Well, and I think working with a practitioner as well is nice because you start to build community. You can start to get like-minded people, and who knows, they can introduce you to other like-minded people. So
your practitioner may, in fact, have Ayurvedic dinners or potluck meals or something like that.
Welcome back,
Wow.
everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio. I'm your host, Sharon Sayler from SharonSayler.com. And we're here with Swami Tirtha, and he's also known as the Orange Cowboy. And he's a best-selling author of multiple books, best known for his book called the Ayurvedic Encyclopedia. And he's been sharing about Ayurvedic and digestion was the topic, but I've been taking him down numerous rabbit holes because I just love talking to him. He's just such a huge wealth of information. I'm always blown away every time I get the joy of talking to him. So, Swami, we're down to just the last, 11 minutes or so. And I know when you and I get together, time flies, but let's just talk about some final thoughts that you have to share with people who are on the healing journey.
Sure. I think we could summarize, because in a sense, we really didn't stray off digestion, because the message is any health condition is has holistic components to it. So just focusing on the digestion requires all these reasons to digestion. So it's emotions, it's spiritual, it's food, it's exercise, it's community, it's joy, it's life purpose. So we can sort of ease it. It's self-love, it's self-worth. That may be the most important of all. If we just take a breath and sit back and say, I love myself, think of the things I'm grateful for in life, you're already healing yourself right then and there. So I'd say that's prime. And then just say, okay, I'm not going to, and again, in the West, we tend to want to compartmentalize everything. We're this, and we got to work on that, We're specializing, but we really need to be general in that. So how is my social life? How is my relationships? Am I exercising? Am I having fun? Am I loving myself? Am I doing what I feel I was born to do on this planet? How is my intuition going? Look at everything. And and that is focusing on, and that will help our digestion more than anything else. A little bit of all of our life.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. I was just mesmerized by that because I got to thinking about how, with my healing journey, it was an unfolding of an investigation, shall I say, a searching around, digging around into every aspect of, am I doing what I want to be doing?
Right.
And am I enjoying what I'm doing?
Right.
And that included who am I hanging around with, and
Absolutely.
are they good for my health or not? So, and then also all aspects of, including my physical environment, I found helped my digestion. I know we mentioned put on music and like no scary movies during eating and things, but I found that there are certain places I like to eat and certain places I prefer not to eat. And that I would say, like, my physical environment. When I'm down here right now, I'm down in South Florida, I love to eat outside. I just enjoy that. It's something about being in the nature that relaxes me while I eat.
Exactly. And then there's the whole feng shui component, and where you eat, if there's the flow of energy in your house, it's also that affects our lifestyle and our health in every way. So the what's in the air, is there a noise pollution? Is there air pollution? All these things affect.
Oh, wow. Now that can become a bit overwhelming as I begin to think. We've gone down this rabbit hole where I'm like going, oh my gosh. But you're right. On the healing journey, as you know, it's been an exploration of every aspect of my life. And I think a lot of people say, well, I got diagnosed, I don't know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 10 years ago. And people think that it started right at that diagnosis. And when I say, look, this didn't happen overnight. An autoimmune condition starts much earlier until the body gets to that point where it says, okay, hello, knock a little louder. I can't take it anymore. And it becomes chronic.
Right.
And so that's interesting to me how I say, like, you didn't get here overnight and you're not going to get out of it overnight. Right. I mean, as much as I like to think you could, but it is a process.
And the nice thing, it is a process, and yet within 3 days of people practicing their foods and their herbs with Ayurveda, they start feeling better. It's amazing. Diabetes, sugar levels are dropping in 3 days. Arthritis pains are disappearing or diminishing significantly in 3 days. So it's a very magical, wonderful process, this Ayurveda. And
Well, not only the Ayurveda, I think our bodies are magical and wonderful. The more I've learned as I've gone through the healing journey, because up until then I was pretty healthy, I thought, I thought. I never really thought about the body and thanked it for doing what it does, getting up every morning and breathing while I've been asleep all night, breathing all day right now. All these things it's doing without me telling it to do anything is pretty awesome. And one of the things I taught myself to do, I noticed when you were giving on the video, probably you didn't see it obviously in the audio, but he was patting himself when he was giving himself gratitude. And someone once told me to give yourself a great big hug. And I do that now. And oddly enough, I thought, well, that's silly. I'll know I'm giving myself a hug. But it works. I think the body is awesome how quickly it responds.
Pat yourself on the shoulder. Good job. Look at what a great day you had. You just made it through the day, way to go. Or if you really, things like Toastmasters is a public speaking group, and I belong to that, or martial arts. They celebrate every little victory you make, and you feel so good from that. So if you ate a good meal, way to go. I'm so proud of you. If you made a connection today, I'm so proud of. Pat yourself on the shoulder. It's silly, but you can just feel your energy shoot right up.
Yes, that's what I love about the body, and that people don't think about how it wants to be in balance. It wants to be in harmony, and that's what it strives to always be.
Right. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
You bring up a really interesting point for people who say, well, I'm healthy enough. I've taught many medical doctors Ayurveda, and one of them was the head of radiology for a hospital in New Jersey. And every patient that came in, he would take a x-ray of their colon, and everybody's colon, no matter what they had going on or didn't have going on, their colons were impacted.
Oh my gosh.
Everyone. It's not healthy, even though it's just we get used to things. And that's where the Triphala, he would give Triphala to everybody. We started with Triphala, we're ending with Triphala. So the point being, even if we feel we're healthy, if we start to do things that are healthier, we will start to feel healthier. I had a guy who had diabetes, and he says, oh, I'm okay. And I got him some herbs. And 3 days later, he said, my goodness, I didn't know I could feel this good. This is a whole new definition of health for me. You're doing such a great service having a radio show that people can just tune in week after week and hear different viewpoints and try different things and move in the directions of how to be healthier. Why not? Because the magic that comes from that is miraculous. You can find out more about me at orangecowboy.com. And there is actually, if you sign up, I've created some Tibetan bowl meditation, a free MP3 you could download right from the homepage, orangecowboy.com. You can learn about my Ayurvedic, I call it VIP Ayurveda because everybody deserves royal health, where I go to your community and teach your community how to live very simply, like we talked about. Whatever your conditions are, then I will come in. If you have a group like autoimmune or a group of people with arthritis or diabetes, we can tailor it specifically to your group. Or if it's just your friends and relatives that want to eat healthier, that's another thing that we can do. And all of my books are on the website as well, and a bunch of other courses, and just find community is all I could suggest, like-minded people.
So everyone, have a great weekend, as I said, whatever your adventures, and as always, enjoy.
The information provided on lifeinterruptedradio.com is for educational purposes only. What you hear, read, and see on Life Interrupted Radio is based on experience only. The information presented here should never be used for any legal, diagnostic, or treatment purposes. Always seek sound legal, medical, and or professional advice regarding any problems, conditions, and any of the recommendations you see, hear, or read here on Life Interrupted Radio. You've been listening to Life Interrupted Radio. To learn more, listen to other shows, and gain free resources that can help empower your life, be sure to stop by lifeinterruptedradio.com.